Here we are, and we had hoped to bring you Richard Richard Barton, resident barrister, who is giving some very interesting advice and suggestions on the family division, which is of always great interest to everybody, of course, for a whole variety of reasons. The way that we transferred it last night when we did it, it hasn't made itself available this morning. But that will be coming probably tomorrow morning. It'd be a good way to end off the day, because he does, or we do, we like to end off with the two Bs, the two barristers, on a Friday. But certainly not available today, unfortunately. What we are going to do, though, is, because we had 2 busy days, is we haven't shown the bloody past of a tiny town, and we had planned to cover that in this week, the last 2 episodes. So we played them once. Now we shall go back and play episode 7 again, and we're getting a lot of nice reaction from this. There's a lot of people didn't know a lot of things about this, which helped, and also. It is an interesting topic that if you've come to a new place to live, you often just look at things and say, I wonder what that is. And although your new neighbours may well have decided they're going to help you out and so on, it's not quite the same, is it? So let's go to the bloody past Chinatown episode 7.
In the centre of Lewes is a war memorial, a monument to the dead of 2 world wars. It's the centre of the huge bonfire celebrations in Lewes on November the 5th. And of course, remembrance services at various times of the year. But it also sits in the middle of an old square, which was surrounded by inns and hotels, the centre of social life in the town over almost 6 centuries. The White Hart we already talked about, but the Crown and the Star both have fascinating histories. The Star Inn was a luxurious hotel used by royalty and gentry from the 14th century, when it was an inn owned by the Southover Priory. Parts of it are still there, disguised now as Lewes Town Hall. The inn was originally used to shelter pilgrims travelling to either Canterbury or Chichester, but it soon outgrew its clientele, and especially after the Priory was torn. 1800s, bishops and poets were praising it for its food and wine. There was, of course, the Black Spot in the time of Queen Anne, when the cellars were used as dungeons to hold some of the martyrs as prisoners, who would be burned at the stake. By the mid-1700s, it was the scene of social gaiety. A monthly supper and ball were held each month throughout the winter, and the Prince Regent used it to hold dinner parties after attending the Lewes races. It is also said the Prince used it for other purposes, meeting young ladies there incognito, presumably for affairs of the heart. In the late 1800s, its clientele had changed, and it was the farm owners who held sway. Their weekly market luncheons were used for heavy social activity until eventually the premises were bought by Lewes Council. They turned it into a town hall late in the 19th century, and this it still is. But the changes have been considerable, and the present town hall is barely recognisable from the outside as the great inn which housed the social elite of Lewes. But the town hall is still a centre of social life, used for parties and dinner dances, and important civic events, such as the exhibition featuring the Rodin statue, The Kiss. Once banned from Lewes, but welcomed back with open arms for a brief stay. The Crown Hotel is almost next door and is still extant. Although it has struggled recently to achieve former glories, it was built in the reign of Charles I and was originally called the Black Lion. It changed its name to the Crown in 1790, and the Crown it has remained until this day. In its better years, it received visits from royalty, King George IV, and there is no suggestion that he was with a young lady. There's a little bit of modern history, though, to add to the Crown. When I first came to Lewes, there was a chap called Tony Burton here who befriended me. Tony took out the tenancy of the Crown Inn after a life of travelling around the world. He installed a grand piano in the bar area and played it to laughter and gaiety throughout the 80s, and he attracted a whole range of entertainers to join him. Those glory days have gone. Ownership of the Star Inn and of many properties around Lewes showed the power and the wealth of the Priory. When Henry VIII had the Priory pulled down, his hatchet man, Thomas Cromwell, grabbed a mansion house nearby, which had been owned by the Priory. But he didn't own it until his power had started to slip. Anne of Cleves led to the downfall of Thomas Cromwell from almost unprecedented heights of power. He was the king's favourite, and why not? He'd masterminded Henry's break with Rome. But he also masterminded his marriage to Anne. She turned out to be anything other than a beauty, and Henry never forgave his friend for arranging the marriage. The king had the marriage annulled after 6 months, on the grounds it had not been consummated. Anne's looks are historically the reason given for why the king couldn't make love to her. Cromwell took the blame, and as he slipped from power, his enemies closed in. He was eventually imprisoned in the Tower and beheaded. He added, in a distant sort of way, to the bloody Lewes tag. The executioner took 3 shots at trying to behead him. Anne of Cleves was granted this 15th century house bearing her name in Lewes when her marriage to Henry VIII was annulled in 1541. It was on the 16th of February 1538 that Lewes Priory was given to Thomas Cromwell, who was then Keeper of the Privy Seal. He immediately set about converting part of the prior's lodgings as a home for his son Gregory.
At the dissolution of the monasteries, Thomas Cromwell, who was Henry's chief advisor, had his beady eye on the land of Lewes Priory, as it was one of the richest and largest priories in the country. Now, he also wanted to set up a household in this area, and in fact his son Gregory lived in the what was latterly known as the Lord's Place across the road. It was the old prior's lodgings. But he certainly became Lord of the Manor of Southover when he got all the Lewes Priory lands off of the Priory. Well, the Priory was closed down and demolished, and they did a pretty good job of that by banging posts underneath the foundations and setting fire to them to bring that down. So, as I say, Cromwell's this was part of his portfolio of properties. So he sent Holbein out to the famous picture, of which we've got a copy out in the hall there, to do paintings of possible, which included Christine of Denmark, but also Anne of Cleves and her sister. Henry liked the picture, so said, right, okay, we'll go ahead with it. I suppose it was a bit of a like online dating in Tudor times. The painting was supposed to be a fairly good likeness of her. She has got fairly heavy eyelids. She tended to wear the heavy German style of clothes, which wasn't the sort of flighty sort of stuff, French stuff that Anne Boleyn and the like sort of worn. She was very pragmatic, as much as she agreed to the annulment of the wedding, and because of that, and you know, I don't know, it's been a bit of a long, circuitous way of getting round to it. To answer your question, the house here became part of the annulment settlement.
Right.
The manor of Southover was one of 9 manors that she got in Sussex. She also, and by manor, we're not just talking about this house and the gardens around it. It's all the land that was providing for. So this was one of 9 manors in Sussex. She had another 9 in Essex. She was welcome at court. She got on well with Henry and Mary and Elizabeth, his 2 daughters as well. She actually outlived all the other wives, and she's the only one buried in Westminster Abbey. At Anne's death, it reverted to the crown, and it went through a number of hands. Most notably was the Saxby family, who did a lot of the alterations to the house. So the original house would have been the footprint that you see from the road. So in fact, the bit that we've got now as the Iron Gallery and the Lewis Room was an old malt house. And eventually, Frank Verrill, who owned it, was on the council and was involved heavily with the Sussex Archaeological Society, presented it to the Society in 1925, and it's been a museum ever since then.
Not much later, in 1603, one of the oldest monuments to Lewis' life began existence. A local lawyer, John Rowe, gifted a piece of land to the town. It was much later that the town worthies decided to put it to use. They created Pell's Pool, a public swimming bath, drawing the water from the spring under the land. The water still comes from that source to this day. The cost of the project in the mid-1800s was £442, 5 shillings and 6pence, raised by public subscription. The name Pell's comes from an ancient word meaning pools. Again, it was the priory that influenced this development. There was a series of pools nearby before even the Romans came to Britain. The Normans transformed these pools into fish ponds, and the priory monks used them to rear swans, providing feathers for their quilts. They later drained the area to create water meadows, which included a paper mill. Locals would swim in the mill pond, and so a tradition of swimming was established in the area, resulting in the present-day swimming pool, the oldest freshwater swimming pool in Britain. But water has not always been a friend to Lewis. Whenever I have talked about attacks on Lewis, it has been either fire, wars, or plague. But there was one enemy which had formerly been a friend throughout its history: water. Back in a moment, but for once not a visit to the pub, but a reflection on the power of water. Lewis has always been subject to flooding, but the worst attack was in modern times, in fact, in the year 2000. The flooding was as serious as it was unexpected. 3 days of exceptionally heavy rain caused the River Ouse to spill over the top of its flood defences. Southover, the area near to the Priory, flooded first. But the worst of the deluge swept into the town centre at about 9 o'clock that night. I don't normally like to give what I call a shopping list of facts and figures, but the devastation was as severe as when the French raided the town in the 16th century. Almost 900 properties were flooded. Over 500 vehicles were wrecked, and the total cost came to £90 million. More than 1,000 people were displaced. The town was cut in half for 3 days. But the true spirit of Louisians was put on show that night. Homes were opened to the displaced. Elbow grease took over, and the task of repairing the town began almost immediately. The long-term effects were felt for months, even years afterwards. Another bloody chapter in the history of the town. Lewes is a town of little theatre, opera companies, bands and musical societies. The people get on with entertaining themselves. So when cinema disappeared from the high street in 1961, it was barely noticed. Nostalgia, yes, but mourning, no. The townsfolk got cracking, and films were shown in a local abandoned church and the little theatre premises. A local radio station gave limited broadcasts for the week of Bonfire, and another week for a now-defunct Lewes Festival in 1997. Radio K-Burn evolved into Rocket Radio, a broadcaster still going strong, when the Bonfire marches begin in November. Then, as if by magic, with the development of blockbuster movies and multi-screen cinemas, the last picture show became the first. A new 3-screen cinema opens its doors. But as you've heard me say several times in this series, this is Lewes, and nothing is ever what it seems. Guess where the cinema is located? No, not quite in one of the 63 pubs, but you're close. In an old storage warehouse owned by Harvey's Brewery. It could only happen in Lewes. Ta-ra! Quite wonderful, quite appropriate. Lewes is full of nostalgia, and previously I have told you about the importance of horse racing to Lewes. But equally, it is a railway town, and the railway has had a profound effect on the history of Lewes. The advent of the railway caused one death and one rebirth of important elements of Lewes the town. When it first came in 1844, the Brighton, Lewes and Hastings Railway gave a new means of trading to Lewes. The port had seen a huge amount of activity as the foundations of the new railway lines demanded clay. The barge owners were only too happy to oblige, and their vessels sailed back and forth up the Ouse, bringing load after load. But there is no sentiment in business, as they say. And the railway quickly took over the haulage business, once enjoyed by the ships sailing on the Ouse. Slowly, shipping declined, and so did the port. Lewes became an increasingly important railway hub, serving the coastal towns of Sussex as well as London and the nearby town of Uckfield. That line no longer exists, but as with all things lost in Lewes, there are serious attempts to get it reopened. While it caused the decline of the port, it was the saviour of the racecourse. Crowds had rapidly declined after royalty had ceased to favour the track, and transport proved difficult. But the trains gave easy access to Lewes, and the course flourished again. The recording of those races is almost as old as I am. I can remember as a little boy standing on the platform scribbling down numbers as trains belching fire and smoke roared by. Well, those days have gone, but the importance of the routes emanating from Lewes have not. They are key transport systems linking the ports, major towns and the capital city with a ribbon of rail track, reaching out across the country, carrying people and goods. But the original network was much more ambitious than this. Trains have always been important to Lewes. And so, let me use the phrase again. This is Lewes, and nostalgia reigns. Around the country, steam enthusiasts have saved miles of track and hundreds of steam engines for posterity. Lewes has done its bit by keeping the Bluebell Railway. The Bluebell, or to give it its proper name, the Lewes and East Grinstead Railway, ran between the two towns from 1877. It had 5 stations, but all of them were rural. The reason was that the railway was built to run near its benefactor, Lord Sheffield's estate, almost entirely for his own convenience. It recorded that the entire touring Australian cricket team on one occasion was taken to his lordship's residence to play against the Sussex team. Now it's a showpiece of steam trains and puffer engines. Clanking along its original route, carrying passengers and goods through wonderful scenery, from Lewes to the old coaching stop of East Grinstead. Nostalgia. Time to say ta-ta again, but tonight, not to a pub, but in a cloud of steam.
Well, there you are, a bit of nostalgia, but also quite informative for those people who have just come into the town, or those people who have lived here for a long time, but who forget some things about our town and city. And tomorrow we'll play the final episode 8, which wraps the whole thing up. She's here. She's sitting glowering, looking at me as if she can't wait to take the rolling pin and batter me over the head with it.
Now, don't tell lies.
I'm not. That's every
You make
element.
altogether too much fuss.
Too much fuss. Goodness gracious me! Just so that you know that I'm not telling you fibs. Look.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
See.
How are you doing?
Uh,
Lovely sunny day out there.
it is indeed. It is indeed.
Yeah.
Now we're about to cast a cloud over it.
I was just thinking that, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
Here she comes, Miss Cheerful.
Let's just. It's now 5 to 10. Let's just. We've been at it for quite some time now. Let's just play one of our favourites, and which we call the Potter's Wheel. But it's really that goes back to the days in BBC in television when we first started broadcasting. Is programs weren't cut to size, so to fill the gaps, the BBC made a series of little vignettes. London to Brighton in 4 minutes was one of them, but the other was known as the Potter's Wheel, and so we always called this little break the Potter's Wheel. Right, there you go, the Potter's Wheel. And actually, that is a little skim through, we say, Lewes Parks, but particularly Grange Park. A beautiful place, set right in the heart of Lewes, and yet tucked away where nobody can see it. So it's nice and private. It's attached to a mansion, if you like, called the Grange, just simply the Grange, that was built with material from the Priory by a man called Newton. And it was said to be the grandest mansion of its day. And it's still pretty good looking, and it's a pity it's fallen on hard times because it's now owned by the council. I can't think of anything worse. So,
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
it is a lovely day outside.
Very, very pretty day. People are smiling. They're out in their summer dresses, the ladies. The men are in their shirt sleeves. I mean, it's very nice. Very nice.
Yeah,
And I think we really do deserve this little bit of sunshine and our spirits lifted because the world is in such a fucking awful state.
yes, it is.
Absolutely. But we will keep a smile on our face and we will push back the way the British do.
Right. Well, that's a lovely introduction. Is that the the world is in an effing state? See, I was very mild. I don't say words like you must kill.
Oh yes, you do.
But
I've seen you in a temper.
oh, have you?
Oh yes.
Oh dear,
You're not
dear,
pretty.
dear.
You're not pretty.
And not pretty. I don't take enemies, do I? No. Actually, one comment about Stephen Catlin that was made on the page that we set up. And a chap said that he enjoyed working with him, but he did not suffer fools gladly, and that's really where we're going to miss him.
Oh
Because,
yes, indeed.
yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Because the fools that are in charge suffer the other fools that aren't in charge all the time, and that's why we're in such a mess.
No, I have to disagree with you. These people are not foolish. They know exactly what they're doing.
You think so?
Yes.
Right.
yes.
Okay. Well,
They're just. I can't say that word evil, can I? No, of course I can't. Because that's a naughty word, isn't it?
That's a naughty word. You have to go into the naughty room to say things like that. But you've been doing some pretty deep research. But I do have to say one thing to you about something in the paper this morning, because I know that you have very, very suspicious, or you blow hot and cold about Elon Musk. But he said something today, which is reported, which I find very significant and very important. And what he said is, yes, worry about artificial intelligence, but we've all become cyborgs anyway already because we've given in to computers, which has been my theme for quite some time, is that computers are running man and not man running computers.
Well, actually, we had this conversation over a little lunch a couple of days back, didn't we?
Yes.
And people have no idea how powerful these this artificial intelligence is. Elon Musk, I don't run hot and cold where he's concerned. I just don't like the man. I think he's part of the cult and he's put in there to work. He didn't achieve what he achieved by himself. He's had incredible help from these unseen people or lizards, monkeys, whatever they bloody well are. I don't know. But there's something going on and it's not very nice. Not very nice at all.
Right. Well, you normally have 2 or 3 themes that you've picked up during the week. So, what's theme number 1?
Well, as the gangsters say, give me the bad news first.
Absolutely.
Okay, here we go. Yes. The EU and the WHO, that is the World Health Organization and the European Union, sorry, not prepared. Here we go. Have to put the bins on, as they say. Representatives of the World Health Organization and the European Commission signed an administrative agreement and letter of intent at the WHO headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland, on Monday, June the 5th, for the upgrading of the EU system of digital COVID-19 certification to be used globally in future health crises. Eurocity Viv whatever reported. Okay.
What does that mean?
Oh, I don't know. Bollocks to it.
No, but I mean, what is the agreement?
Well, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
This is the people that reported it.
Right.
URCTIV. Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, right.
It's expected the announcement sparked instant backlash on social media, while experts and politicians weighed in to warn about the terrifying consequences that such a system could have in store. Are you seeing it yet? Yet another conspiracy theory becoming true. German MP Christine Anderson tweeted, I have a lot of respect for this woman. If you don't do as you are told, get X amounts of mRNA shots, get recommended checkups, procedure, whatever they deem beneficial to public health. Definition subject to change any given time, and are unable to provide proof, you will be labeled a threat to society and will be turned off with the flip of a switch. Thank you.
Wow.
That's what they've done. They've signed this
So
bill.
they signed that. Let's go into a bit of detail then, because I know you've made reference to this in the past, but now I think that your adoring public needs to have it explained exactly what it is. The agreement has been signed.
Yes.
Once again, can you just give the statement?
Well, it is the agreement has been signed to make for digital passports.
All right,
to
that's right.
say that you have had these injections.
Now, what is a digital passport?
Well, that will be. I don't even know what an app is, quite frankly. I've got a mental block against all this business, but it will be something on your telephone, which you will have to show to go to places. And if you don't have that, then you won't be able to go. So then this World Health Organization are taking over. They're coming on in leaps and bounds. And there's one guy that they've put at the top of the tree, which they can call Ted Ross, which they can remove anytime they want. But he's a dubious character, I promise you. But he has the power to say, right, now then we have detected a very, very difficult flu, so we're shutting down absolutely everything. He has the power to do that. Or right now there will be no more money because it spreads germs. Now, all these ridiculous things that they did in the last pandemic, they intend to do again, but much more forcefully. You see, it worked in the past. People like sheep did as they were told, went out, here's the old arms, fill me full of poison, did as they were told because they trusted their governments. And these people are, I'm sorry, you don't trust them. Bill Gates and his lady, I don't know if she's still around or not, Big Mel, whatever her name is, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. These particularly dreadful people that have killed more people with their injections throughout India and Africa than is countable.
Is that
Now-
documented?
Hmm?
Is that
yes,
documented?
Yes, absolutely. I even think, I'm not sure, but I think certain parts of India, he is banned. Gates, they won't let him in. That's a big deal. And anyway, these people are now very, very much in charge. When Donald Trump was president, he said these people are no good. No more funding. Nothing for them at all. Then Bill Gates came along with Soros and the other very, very wealthy chaps and financed this who lot. And because they want to sell their shots. And all these people, all these men, they are eugenics. And that is to cut down on the human population because they say there's too many people in the world. This is the entire idea of it. This is why giving shots to little babies as soon as they're born, and there's the dreadful things they're doing in this country with our schools. And our government has let these people in, and our king. And the odd knighthood here and there, they take it for a joke because I swear they've got the king in their pocket, and our other leaders too, because these are very, and if these men are totally unelected, they pay no taxes and they do exactly as they want. Well, that school in Wales, and I'm sure there's other schools out there too, they just came in and said, this is what you're going to teach the kids from 5 years of age, because they want the European Union to make paedophilia legal. Yes, this is what they want. They want no male, no female. They do not want the human race.
Let me be clear. Who is it that is lobbying for legal paedophilia?
The European Union.
When you say the European Union, you mean that this is embraced as official
Yes.
policy?
Yes, these
Right.
people have embraced that.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. So Europe, but it isn't. It isn't law yet.
Well, it is law now for
Well,
Europe. For Europe, it is, and all they've got to do is take it into America and have what's his name? That guy,
Joe Biden. Yeah.
Biden sign this, and he is very, very pro these people, very, very pro. Then they've got the world. Quite unbelievable. I'm very sure people out there think that I'm exaggerating. And
I want us
don't
to
know
be
what I'm
clear,
talking about.
because this is pretty serious stuff.
Yeah.
Is that the agreement is for introduction of an electronic passport.
Yes.
At the moment, the agreement is accepted between the World Health Organization and the European Union. The United States has not signed yet,
Not yet.
but is likely to.
Now then, some months back, we had this discussion, and you informed me that Biden cannot do that just because he wants to. He has to go through certain organizations and people before he is allowed to do that. Now, I found that piece of information very, very reassuring, but we don't know, do we?
No, I mean, if in fact Biden says that he's going to, the whole essence of the American system, although talking to our colleague Melissa each Friday, as we do, and we will tomorrow, and I shall raise this again with her, is that governance in the United States at the moment is in turmoil because they've got an election coming up. They've got an aging president who, as you say, is willing to sign all these things. They've got Donald Trump trying to get back into the scheme of things and looks as if he perhaps may make it. We've got the DeSantis, I think it is, in Florida, who is basically a fundamentalist. These things, are they favored by everybody or just Biden?
Oh, that I don't know. I don't live there, but he does. He is very, very woke. He's sucking up to these people on the lawn, and you are the greatest, and the whites are no good, and all this. I don't know if this guy's mental or what, but he's dangerous because he's the president. So I know that he is very, very in favor of these people and this world domination that they are going on.
Yeah.
Very. What is left? I know Trump said no, don't fund them. DeSantis, I'm very sure would be against this. Very sure. But I'm not there, and the information that I get lately, Keith, is very, very difficult to come by because the internet is so censored nowadays that all I can gather is it doesn't look too good.
Right. Well, certainly it seems to be banded around at the top level. I mean, I am our own government, for instance, is we do have checks and balances. Perhaps the worrying thing is that the checks and balances of our own system is under great pressure because essentially it's the House of Lords that is the counterbalance to everything in the House of Commons.
You were
And that
slightly
is
reassuring when you told me that. Please do it again.
Yes, well, the way that things work here is that legislation is introduced by the government. Normally, it follows the pattern. I mean, everybody says, "Oh, well, wonderful ceremony, isn't it? Is it a waste of money? The Queen's speech or now the King's speech to open Parliament?" But essentially, it lays out what the government plan to put into Parliament in terms of its legislation for the coming session. So what do we have? 2 sessions a year, I think. Yeah. Then it is worked on by the officials, and it is presented in, first of all, a green paper.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, this is broadly what we plan to do, and then a white paper, which is the detail.
Yeah.
Now, the white paper is debated in Parliament. It goes to the House of Lords. It's debated in the Lords. The Lords sends it back. The House of Commons then with any changes and so on, so debates it again. It goes back a second time to the Lords, and then it comes back for a final vote in the House of Commons. Mm-hmm. So that is the checks and balance. The big problem we face is that our leaders for the past God knows how many years have used peerages as lollipops. Yeah. Liza, you've been a good and faithful servant. We'll make you a dame. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So the upper house is packed with people who have no idea why they're there. Well, they have. They know that because they work towards it. And I believe
they're just hanging in for the knighthood.
People who did hang in. Well. Knights don't sit in the House of Lords. It has to be a peerage, mm-hmm. Lord so and so or whatever. Mm-hmm. Although there are some odd quirks like the spiritual lords, so that bishops are members of the House of Lords as well. Oh. But it's essentially it can tamper just as it sees fit with any legislation. So whether in fact Sunak and his mob, if I could put it that way, even if they're not sympathetic to some of these things, is when they put up their legislation to the House of Lords, it has to be debated and pulled apart and put back together. And then ultimately it's signed by the king, of course, to bring it into law. So those checks and balances need to sort of be gone through before anything can actually take place. The trouble is that there have been reports in the media recently that the system is being tweaked a little, shall we say? And indeed, on the asylum seekers, for instance, Rishi Sunak invoked something that I didn't know existed. Is he went and he told the Lords if they didn't actually vote his way, he would actually get on with doing it anyway, which apparently
this
he's
is what
the
they
right
all
to
do, isn't it?
Yeah.
They make a mockery of.
I'm not terribly fond, as you well know, of our system of governance at the moment. I'm very critical of it, and I think that we're sleepwalking in it, and that's when, of course, what's the phrase? Evil men succeed when good men do nothing.
Absolutely, yes, and that has proven to be true, throughout history, hasn't it?
Okay, now, well, I find that is quite frightening. But what you do, Eliza, is with some of this research that you do, is you alert us. So, although we're not a big organization, we do keep a very keen eye on what goes on in Parliament. Of course, we do a review each morning of the front pages.
Yes, and may I say, you work very, very hard at what you do, Keith.
That's very kind of you.
It's not. I'm not kind. I'm not a kind person at all. I'm truthful. You work very hard.
Well, we like to. You give us some leads onto the sort of things that we should be asking, looking at, and keeping an eye on.
Hope it's of some use.
All right, now let's move on to number 2.
Well, what we got here? Yes, George Soros. The guy that pays for all this lot to come in and crowd the countries. George Soros has handed over his vast globalist empire to his son, the 37-year-old playboy, Alexander Soros.
Ooh.
Oh, there's a little thing here. According to the Harvard Business Review, some 70% of family-owned businesses fail or are sold before the second generation takes the reins, and only 10% of those businesses make it to the third generation. While George Soros' vast properties are both businesses and non-profits, the same rules and odds generally apply to both types of institutions. I don't know about you, but I look forward to the swift collapse of Soros Incorporated under Alex's watch.
Are you quoting somebody there? I don't know about you, or do you mean you?
Yes, I'm quoting this guy, Jordan Sachetel from the dossier.
Right. Okay.
I thought that was rather lovely.
Because actually, strangely enough, I've had something to do with the Soros Foundation. When I was in Kosovo, the development of press freedom was undertaken to some extent by the Soros Foundation, or at least they had a program in place.
Oh, really?
And
they have a very long arm, don't they?
Yes, they do. And one of their offices geared towards geared towards media was in Budapest. We would fly up to Budapest and meet with them and have roundtable conferences. Now, I have to say that I wasn't terribly impressed with how those roundtable conferences were being held. And at the time, I thought it was a much better opportunity to go and try some Hungarian wine than it was to get serious about anything. But the Soros Foundation is you could see the influence and the power that it had.
Yes.
On top of that, I is a very good friend of mine who was in the city. Yeah, I can name him because we're not too far off. I can name him is Roger Nightingale. He's a very deep thinker. He's an excellent man. And Roger told me that he was a leading analyst in the city. When I say leading, he was a guru. He's one of those people that people bow down to. But Roger told me that he did meet George Soros on one occasion, and that he was so unimpressed with it.
I think he would be.
Yeah.
Very sinister man.
Yeah. I'm aware a little bit of the Soros Foundation, but he's another, and here I totally agree with you because this is from my own experience and my own researches. He is quite secretive in some of the things that he does, and I think that he also goes and participates in your favorite, the World Economic Forum.
Oh yes, he's very, very well up there with all that lot. Anyway, on a lighter vein, and this is laughable.
God, we need a lighter vein, don't we?
ITV bosses offer to pay for counselling for this morning's employees over Philip Schofield's scandal after Holly Willoughby said it was a lot to process. Bless him. Willoughby said, "You, me, and all of us at this morning gave our love and support to someone who was not telling the truth, who acted in a way that they themselves felt that they had to resign from ITV and step down from a career that they loved," according to The Sun. They're paying for therapy for these people.
I actually, having been around this, this is my sector, the media, and I've said to you, we've had young ladies here for the morning show who would knock those two in that program into a cocked hat.
Mhm.
The thing is that the system does not permit people from around the country and from outside the favoured in a media circle in London from getting the opportunity. But I have never ever rated the two of them. And the fact that it's hoo-ha.
And now she
me
wants
is,
therapy. Good God.
Yeah, well, I mean, that doesn't
They
surprise
knew
me.
what was going on.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
goodness sake.
It doesn't surprise me, Liza, because I don't approve of it, by the way. That's not what I'm saying. It doesn't surprise me because one of my colleagues, who is now living in the south of France, and a man of considerable substance, and a very, very good journalist, he describes some of these people as lightweights. In other words, they're frippery.
Well,
They
they're
don't
called
think.
useful idiots.
That's a good phrase, yeah. So the sort of thing that has happened with Holly Willoughby. What was your last little thing again about them?
They themselves felt that had to resign from ITV and step down from a career that they loved,
Right. Yeah.
according to the Sun. Yes,
Yes.
it's a joke.
Well, I tend to agree with you there.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do we go from here?
Well, this is very important, Keith, and very encouraging too. Okay. Yes. Australian-born actor Mel Gibson is about to make a 4-part documentary film about the underbelly of child trafficking in the US and other countries. Child trafficking is worth $34 billion a year.
Wow.
Trafficking untraceable babies without birth certificates are very profitable because they are untraceable. Some babies are bred to be trafficked. They are raped, sacrificed, and de-organed. Their lifespan is approximately 2 to 4 years. Mel Gibson will be victimized, I promise you he will be, in the future, because some years back he spilled the beans on child trafficking in Hollywood, and they made it so bad for him. He said, well, I think I'm out of here. I'm going back to Australia for a few years. He came back and spent a few years away on his ranch down there in Australia because he was born there. And then he came back to Hollywood and had a very, very successful career again. Yes, so victimized. Mel Gibson will be victimized in the near future because some years back he spilled the beans on child trafficking in Hollywood. That did not win him too many friends. Well, he is about to reveal what he knows again. God bless you, Mel. People involved on the production of this documentary with Mel Gibson are a man called Tim Ballard, former CIA and blah, blah, blah. Good reputation. He's founded this organization, founder of Our Rescue, Operation Underground Railway. He's heavily involved in this. And he went to Mel Gibson and said, can you help me? He said, not looking for your money. He said, can you help me with the film? And Mel said, I'll get you money and I will help with the film. Also, Tony Robbins is the executive producer, and the film should be released quite quickly. It's done, it's made. They're just waiting for a release date on it. Ukraine is badly affected today with this child trafficking, and they tend to make that a strong focal point in the film. So, there are some decent people out there that are trying to do some things.
Yeah.
Keith.
Now, I've always thought of Gibson as being a sort of how should we say, emotionally strained actor. In fact, he comes through in the films that he makes where he always plays somebody who's very tense and so on. Is Gibson reacting emotionally, or has he thought this thing through?
I think he's thought it through very, very carefully, because when he was in Hollywood, he was talking about the wild parties and what went on with little children and the whole bit. And he was talking in confidence. Somebody recorded the conversation, let it go. And he didn't win any friends, did he?
No, right.
So he said, to hell with this lot. I think I'll get out for a couple of years and go home. He went down to Australia, did a bit of ranching, he said, and then he got an offer for Top Gun. I think it was a film. Came back and he was on Parkinson's, and he gave a little watered down speech about what he told before. It was very, very, very mild. And he said, listen, let's drop it. I'm here to talk about my film, kind of thing. You couldn't blame him, could you? And the film was highly successful, and he went on and did a lot of very good stuff afterwards. But now they will bring up negative things about him, obviously, because he's doing such a powerful film and he knows an awful lot and he's prepared to tell it.
Yeah, so that is interesting. And,
It's very interesting, isn't it? And because
No,
as we were talking about, I think it was last week or the week before, the biggest money makers in the world, arms, human trafficking, and a big pharma,
Yes,
isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
So I think he's a very brave man, quite frankly. I really do.
Well, let's stay with the brave man theme.
Well, do you think he's brave?
I don't know. I mean, you raise an interesting thing because we had on yesterday a young man who was in South Africa and was mugged and was stabbed and damn near died.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting part of his story was that he took up running as a therapy after, if you have nightmares, I suppose you would.
Terrible shock to the system, dreadful.
And he took up running to alleviate the situation. And he was sort of making reference to the pressures that we journalists are now under.
Mm-hmm. I know the pressures I'm under locating all this stuff.
Yeah.
It well, sometimes you call me and I'm a bit depressed, aren't I?
Yes.
Yes, it does do an awful lot to the mind, and to be able to do what he's doing. I think he's brave.
Yes, he is. But generally speaking, he was somewhat sympathetic to my point of view, because I mean, let's face it, I rant and rave and I stamp my little feet and
Yes. Why not? Why not?
Well, I mean, I'm not apologising for it, but I mean, a lot of people quite often, with people like me and some of the other people that shout and so on the media, we tend to be discounted. This young man made a very good case for how media is under pressure, and as it gets under pressure, so it doesn't do its job. And who was it the other day that said we had somebody on who said that they were very disappointed in the performance of the media in some issue. Do you remember it?
Oh, well, I think the media behaved appalling during the lockup business. Terrible. I mean, the BBC, good. So many good journalists were banned from going on there because they were the fairy tales they were telling us.
It was a strange period, all right, that's for sure. But
and very, very few journalists came on board. They knew what was going on.
Yeah. So you asked me about Mel Gibson, though, I think. And is he brave to take up this making of the film? So I was telling you about the young man in South Africa and so on. So with bravery, it was a question, and where we are we brave? And I have to say, I think there is a difference between putting up with the pressure from society, where you could be destroyed, your reputation taken away, your career taken away, as opposed to standing up to, say, somebody wielding a knife. There are two different types of bravery. I would say, looking at Mel Gibson, that he probably is, in the latter sense, brave, that he'll put up with that. But I have to say to you, is I mean, I've been threatened. I've been in some pretty nasty situations, but essentially, it's if I've been brave at all, it's because I've stood up against authority, not because I've looked somebody in the eye, and I have looked somebody in the eye who's been threatening to kill me. I mean, as close as you are. It's not pretty. So there are
No,
different
darling,
types.
darling, you're quite safe. You're quite safe.
There are different types of bravery, and I don't know about Gibson, but he will be put to the test. He will be put to the test.
Yes, yes. Well, all these men will, the involved with this will
Yeah.
be put.
So tell me
to
again,
test.
is it you say it's a 4-part documentary?
Yes,
Right.
on human trafficking,
All right.
children's trafficking.
There's no doubt some pretty evil things go on when it comes
Unthinkable
to children.
things. You wouldn't want to know about it, and I certainly am not digging down that hole to know about it, because I know it goes on. Well, it's just
Well, I mean,
35 billion a year.
yeah.
I mean, whew.
I mean, it's
No, I'm sorry. I think what are human beings? How low can we sink?
well.
How low
I mean,
can we possibly sink? And when we know that goes on and we don't do anything about it.
That's nothing new, Liza. It's nothing new. I mean, men have backed off from things in the past, depending upon pressures and so on. I mean, one of the things that I find disgraceful is the use of children in pornography.
It's unthinkable.
And
I can't even think about it.
yeah, if you remember that there was this whistleblower who went to Scotland Yard and had several people investigated because of paedophilia and so on.
Is he still alive?
He's in prison because eventually they found out that it was all false. And Scotland Yard followed it down. Very famous cases just recently. And in fact, I looked at his claims quite carefully because he targeted somebody that I knew very well. And that was what was his field marshal, and I knew his name 2 seconds ago. Of course, this is what happens to me at the moment. Is a field marshal, and Gwyn. The last name will come. And he was pilloried, and in fact, it turned out to be a fantasy of this guy. Now, that's the problem, because you get some people who say, "Oh gosh, I'll just cause trouble," and when they're not properly investigated, they cause trouble where trouble didn't exist. Having said that, that sort of trouble does exist. Why aren't we investigating it more?
Exactly. I mean, it's common knowledge that human trafficking is the second biggest money
Bramall,
maker in
the Lord
world.
Bramall.
Yeah.
I'm talking about. Yeah, I knew him quite well, and he. I mean, he was a very interesting man, actually.
But these are sort of it. Yeah, I'm sure he is. But these are individuals. I mean, it needs to support these people en masse. We have to support these people en masse.
Yeah. No. What I'm pointing out is that you can get people who are just mischievous, and they send everybody scuttling down the wrong alley. They look at people who are not guilty instead of looking at the people who are guilty. That makes you wonder whether, in fact, that's a feint. In other words, try to concentrate on X number of people because it's going to make headlines and so on. So, and all the while that's going on, is you're getting on with your business.
Well,
now you look at that for me. You're my main.
There's whenever anybody wants to try and do something, there's always opposition against it, and especially something like this where you're taking someone's living away from them. these men and women, they're making a hell of a lot of money out of what they're doing,
Mm.
worth fortunes. So whenever you challenge that, it's a terrible, dangerous thing.
Well, it is.
Very, very
Yes,
dangerous.
I mean that the side issue of that is
So
murder.
all the time it is dangerous, then people back off from it and let it go on.
Yeah,
But if enough people challenge this situation, then it stops. I mean, just a pocketful and here and there, God bless them. But as you say, they can lose their lives over it or be put in prison or whatever. And it's a very dangerous subject to challenge. So
Yeah.
because it's dangerous, so you're going to say, sod it. No, I'm not going into that. No,
Yeah.
no, I don't want to. I mean, whatever. You see, when I'm doing this, what I come in here and do, what I'm trying to do is rouse people en masse to come in and just say, no, sorry, we're not having it, mate.
Mm.
We're not having it. And if enough people do this, then we have some chance.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we have some chance as human beings. Otherwise, I'm afraid we don't.
Well,
If we're allowing all the time, we're allowing these people to do what they are doing to us and to our children, because they're all our children, aren't they? Let's face it.
Oh.
All the time we are allowing that, then I think we might just as well sign our brains up to this Elon Musk, because we're not worth fighting for. No, sorry.
That's pretty heavy condemnation of our society.
Well,
but
I'm sorry.
I know what
think
you
it is.
mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't go. I mean, I do believe in basically the human spirit, and I believe the human spirit can overcome. As you say, what you try to do is to get en masse. What I am trying to point out to you is that along the way, that there are all sorts of things that come to light, and we have to be very careful. For instance, and I know one of the things that I admire you for is you do your research. I mean, God, you do it morning, noon, and night, so that when you come in here and you talk about some of these things, is you have researched it well. Because when it's not researched well, that's when you get a great big scandal. And the moment you have a scandal such as where Lord Bramwell and actually former Chancellor of the Exchequer was also what's the name of the lady that has become a social media person? Anyway, is if you're not careful, is that it takes away from what you're doing. You see what I mean? So we've got to actually be absolutely sure that when some of these charges are made, that they are legitimate charges. Otherwise, poof.
Well,
nobody believes you.
What do you want me to do that I'm not doing, Keith?
No, you're doing plenty. Thank you. That's the point. What I'm saying is keep an eye on these things, because you come up with some astonishing stuff. It's all I want to make sure is that whenever we actually and I'm quite confident in your research, as I just said, whenever we say watch out for this, is that it is something that should be watched out for, not this false lead that went down with. I mean, it's Cressida Dick and so on and so forth. The head of Scotland Yard. They all got conned by it. Yeah.
They all what?
Got conned by it. I'm surprised that you don't remember the case, because it's only just recently.
Well, I remember Cressida Dick. I
Yeah.
mean, God's truth. What? Don't mention the woman's name to me, please.
Right.
No, I'm sorry.
Although she's still got a job.
Of course she has.
Yeah.
She's protected these people.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Now there is something that is strangely enough it intrigued me, and I ask you each week to mention it. Is where are my 15-minute cities standing?
Well, Thetford, where they challenged the mayoress there, you know,
yeah.
and the whole bit, and they really stood up against it. They now one of the two chaps that were the leaders on there, he's got himself voted on the council, so he is now on the council, so he knows exactly what is happening
Right.
when they, bring these things forward. And so far, they've backed off totally.
You and
And the little one, Wiggles, Schmiggles, Fills, or whatever.
right.
That has
Wigglesworth, I think.
Wigglesworth, but that's it. Yes, who they said we're not paying you any money, any rates or anything. We're keeping all those for ourselves, and we're going to manage it, and we're not paying you your salary. Well, they've opened up little shops around and the whole thing, and they're doing just that apparently. So
How
that's a
interesting.
bit of good news, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really is. God bless them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fascinated by by that particular project because actually it is unlike some of the other things that go underground. It's one that we can look at and we can report on, and indeed you do, which gives us some idea of how far people are getting. And one of the interesting things is that when you first started with that, you thought really that it was fait accompli, that they really got it. But in fact, now you're reporting that people are fighting back and winning.
Yes, and the man that is on the council, that was a big thing. They voted him in on that. So he knows what's going and he reports.
Do you know how long we've been going?
Don't know.
50
You
minutes.
don't care.
We've been 50 minutes again. And it's almost as if we only just started.
Well, I'm very, very sorry I couldn't bring better news. But it might be out there and it's censored. You can't tell. There might be some bloody good news out there,
Yes.
but they're not letting it through.
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is, Liza, of course, it is unfortunate, but our whole industry really looks at bad news, don't we? I mean, nobody wants to know that you get on the bus and get home safely.
No,
They only want to know if you get on the bus and the bus crashes and you're killed.
Yeah.
We, by the very nature of our work, have to work with bad news.
yes.
That's why people like you, not me, I'm an old pussycat, but people are very tough because you're able to work in this sphere. And I know you get depressed sometimes, but the fact is that you do you work in this sphere where you have to deal with this bad news, and you come and you report it, and you give your views on it, and that's no easy. Believe me, people out there, that's no easy thing to do, no easy thing at all. So take a look at this lady, right? Yeah, she's a bit of a giant.
Oh. No, you overestimate me. You really do. No, I'm just an ordinary woman that sees life the way it is and would very much like to improve it. And I think it can be improved.
Okay, shall we see what we've got for the last 10 minutes? Something that's nice and gentle, and I don't know what. It seems to have faded again. I keep these little things if I can, so that we are able to just for a little bit of time towards the end with something, because you're quite right. Here we deal with 3 hours of gloom and doom and bad things. It's nice sometimes to go out on a just something that's rather pleasant. But I
We'll put the bloody War of Lewis on. That's
well,
cheerful.
the only thing is that would actually that would keep us going until noon. And I don't know about you, but I need a drink.
Oh, is it 1 o'clock? I forgot.
It's not far off. If we're nothing but practical here, is a drink is sometimes absolutely essential. We're not seeing much there. but we can talk our way through, can't we? Let's yeah, it's not bad. Let's just talk about Liza Page, the lady, because you actually gave a little chapter and verse, because we're meeting with some advisors, and one of this advisor said, "Tell me about yourself." And you gave him a rundown on
Did
Liza
I?
Page. Yes,
Did
you
I?
did.
I can't
You did.
remember that. What
So,
did I
why
say?
not tell your viewers who you are?
My name is Liza Page, and I was born in Brighton. Very, very pretty town. I had cracking parents. They were marvelous. I had a brother and a sister. They've all passed on now and left me. Rotters. I'm now left with a beautiful nephew, William and Spencer, and my brother's passed on, who I was very, very fond of. That makes me sad because his name was Bert Page and Lewis was his town. He was so well known and so loved in this town. I sort of came in on his coattails. And I see him walking down the road. I'm sure his ghost is all around this town still. I really see him, which is very comforting, very comforting. I made my living for 25 years as an entertainer. I was a singer and an actress. I've worked all over the world and I've lived in many different countries. I've had that privilege. For 5 years, I lived in America, in Hollywood. I was sort of in and out actually, but I was based there, and I enjoyed that very much indeed. I like American people very much. I I think their spirit is nice and a very generous nation. I'm amazed though. I just can't understand why they're standing for what they're standing for. That something's gone wrong somewhere because this pioneering spirit, what they did, building up, country in very very little time, it's absolutely amazing. When you go there and you see these skyscrapers, I mean, this has all come virtually in the last 100 years, I suppose, hasn't
Yeah.
it?
Were you
So
in South
now-
Africa at all?
Yes, I've
You were,
done.
weren't you?
Yes, in
Yeah.
South Africa quite a bit. Yes, which was oh heavens, that was beautiful down there. Absolutely lovely, a gorgeous place. So I'm really sort of privileged. I came back to see my mother. Um, 33 years ago or something like that, and I intended wasn't so good, and I intended to get her well. And so I said, I'll be here 3 months, then I have to go back and do some work. And got stuck there and was her sole carer for 11 years. Um, Eventually, she was in a wheelchair, and it was. I tried doing other things, but while I was doing that, I set up a bathrobe business and some sleeping mask business, yeah, which was great fun. For my bathrobes, I got an order from Fortnum and Masons, which was like being hired at the Palladium for me. It was a lovely feeling. Um, anyway, my mother and we shared our lives together for that 11 years, and I look back on it, and it was the best time of my life. I didn't think so. I didn't think so at the time, but it was, and it was a big achievement for me. Now, also, I have my brother, company of my brother and his family too, which I didn't have for all the years that I was traveling abroad at my other work. Um, it was when my mother died, I didn't know what to do. Um, so when I was in Hollywood, I had a chat show called Tea with Liza Page. So I thought, well, sort of celebrities and that. I thought, well, I'd like to start doing that again, but I don't want celebrities. I just want ordinary people, everyday people, which I did, and I called it Everyone Has a Story. And I've been doing that filming for the last 12 years now. And it's been absolutely fantastic, Keith, because I have met so many people, and they sit down and they talk, and they don't stop, and they tell you their life stories. And all these shows that I have, you go to Liza Page, Everyone Has a Story with Liza Page, and you will see some of my past work on there. And they're like my children. They really are. And I'm as protective of these shows as I would be my children. They're my family, and I get such a kick out of meeting people. I really do. And because everyone does have a story. And when I first approached some of these people, I said, would you like to come and tell your story? And they said, oh, I haven't done anything. I said, well, I bet you have. And when they sit down, it's unbelievable what comes out, because you don't have to be in show business and be a star or this, or be a multimillionaire or a hotshot businessman or woman. No. In fact, those people don't interest me too much at all.
Yeah.
It's your window cleaner, your average person in the street. And I thought, well, they're the only people that are going to tell me, because they're older, their stories. But no, I've got some youngsters on there too. And when they start, whoa. So I thought, no, this is me. I'm the Everyone Has a Story lady. And I hope to do that for as long as I possibly can. Because when I die, which it's not going to be that long, because I'm no spring chicken, these stories will be on the internet. It will come under the heading, I think, of British heritage. These are mostly for the main English people. And I'll be leaving something really, really very, very nice behind, especially the way people lived in the past when I was young, my generation, and the way life is changing now vastly. And not really for the better, I promise you. But nevertheless, those stories will be documented for future generations, hopefully, to see. So I've had an excellent life. My parents, and then the traveling, and the man I was lived for many, many years, the love of my life. He did annoy me at times, though. I think most people do. Anyway, we did a lot of living together. A lot of living. It was living what we did, all that traveling. And now I feel I'm in a different vein of life now that I'm doing what I'm doing, which Keith Hayes has given me the opportunity to do. And I'm very, very grateful, because I hope somewhere down the line I might make a slight impression, and somebody younger than me will get up and maybe do what I can't do.
I only just out of sheer terror.
Pardon? What did you say?
Our time is up. We've had a lovely hour. In fact, it's 11:01. Would you believe? Lovely hour. Good to see you as always, Liza. And what Liza not only does a lot of the research throughout the week, but she also is part of Mirador and does all sorts of things, particularly on the publicity side. So she is part of our team, and I hope that you'll join her, me, and so on and so forth. I'll be back tomorrow morning. I hope I'm feeling a little bit more lively. I've got the hiccups. Can you tell that? Oh, no. And I need a drink. Until tomorrow morning. Toodle pip. Say toodle pip, Liza.
Toodle pip. Bye-bye.
Thank you.